Good afternoon to some of you joining us. Good morning still to many of you joining us. Good late afternoon to some of our European audience. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council, a Boston-based market research analyst firm covering best practices and service, customer experience, customer support. Welcome to today's presentation of the inService podcast series, Planning for Next Generation Field Service, with Taksina Eammano, the Executive Vice President of Field Service of Salesforce. I think we've heard of a little organization called Salesforce before, but wanted to give a warm welcome to Salesforce and Taksina for today's featured presentation. Before we welcome Taksina into the discussion, today's podcast is accessible on all major podcast channels that you get your podcast from. So if you'd like to reference this back after the fact, you can go to all the major podcast channels. You can also download and consume it from not only the Service Council's website, servicecouncil.com. I think it will be accessible at Salesforce as well. So please feel free to visit Salesforce's website to learn more. There's other thought leadership research, case study, customer transformation stories you can learn from. We want to make this discussion interactive. That is a big part of what makes these discussions valuable. Not only having a thought leader like Taksina talk to us about her perspective, but for you to get your questions answered. And we'd love to get some comments and some reactions to some of Taksina's viewpoints as we go through the discussion. So without further ado, I welcome Taksina Eammano, the Executive Vice President of Field Service of Salesforce. Welcome, Taksina.
Thanks for having me, John.
Outstanding. So, Taksina, our audience knows Salesforce, but can you just give an introduction to yourself, some personal and professional background on yourself, and then we'll jump into Salesforce's application to the field service market, which has been evolving over many years.
Sure. I've always found myself sort of at this intersection of customer experience and tech innovation. So think of financial advisors out in the field trying to help their clients, all the way through to helping nonprofits really think about digitizing fundraising very differently. And so over the years, I've just really worked in sort of bringing technology, enabling processes, and traveled and lived across the globe, and so have this really global experience. At Salesforce, I've actually led our customer innovation teams, and I began there to sort of help push where our biggest and largest customers were thinking differently about how to really extend their customer experience on our platform. And so I led that across from multiple industries. And on the product side, I really led our IoT product, our service products for bots and Einstein and automation. And recently was the Chief Product Officer of Sales Cloud, the product that most people know Salesforce for. And probably earlier this year, joined the field service team, and I am incredibly excited. On the personal side, I'll tell you why I'm excited. My father was a serial entrepreneur. He was just genuinely ran a lot of different businesses, one of which was a satellite installation company, and took contractor jobs to kind of install those. And really sort of sometimes when I show up at work these days, I think about the contractors and the organizations that, they have to work with to serve, their communities, and how they're trying to run their own mini little businesses. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, it's always good when it hits home, right? In terms of your
It
father and
really
his
does.
experience, and you're right. The field service business is no longer just those full-time engineers. It's that extended labor network, especially in today's economy, where the gig economy is really supplementing that full-time labor workforce, and in many respects is a dependency amongst many manufacturers because of the labor shortage. We'll get into that in a later point, but
Yeah.
I love the story there. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of Salesforce, their customers, and your journey into field service? Because obviously legacy Salesforce was sales oriented, right? CRM, and now venturing into field service was kind of not a new thing, but it was an evolving element to Salesforce's application. Can you just talk a little bit about how you've entered into this market and some of the customers that you're impacting? That'd be great.
Yeah, you hit it, you start there, which is true. Like Salesforce is known for CRM, And for 23 years, the Sales Cloud was our product and first product that we really created. But we have been founded on this, ethos of deep listening for our customers, deep listening to where they want us to go. And it was a natural extension for us to move into service. Right. And so you obviously you're selling to customers, you now need to service that relationship, which is actually much longer a relationship. And so from service, customers also, it's not just the contact center and everyone inquiring. It really is about that field. And so I think that genesis of how we got here is really around the evolution of serving our customers. And as an organization, we did make a really great acquisition in Click Software, and really sort of took on and became the market leaders. We were already partners before that, but took on an opportunity to really transform what customer experience and in-field operations really becomes for Salesforce. And so, this, along with many other parts of portfolio, really sort of sets us up in a very different way. And so my role at the field service is to lead the product strategy, our vision, and where we are going in this space, really as part of that 360 for Salesforce. And so how do we leverage all of the solutions that we have at Salesforce? Because that, at the end of the day, we're not solving for one silo. And I think, we can talk about like what those silos are. We really should be thinking about this whole customer experience and your business as an operation, Mike. And so how do we use all of those things, whether it's Tableau analytics, our integration to other platforms, like really thinking through all of that and bringing that so that our field operations can be as most efficient and effective as possible.
Ah, that's a great story. It's been a journey. The Click Software was a partner of the Service Councils way back when we launched about 12 years ago. Worked with very closely with Moshe Ben Basat as CEO and founder, and Hanan Carmeli and many others across the team, who are now Salesforce team members. Some of which held on. So kudos on that journey. Let's go into the topic du jour, right? So next generation field services, right? Which it's a wide open topic, right? As our audience can appreciate,
Yeah.
next gen has many different definitions, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are talking about the movement from reactive to proactive to outcome. Others are talking about this digital journey and transformation. What does next gen field services mean to you personally, and to Salesforce? What are you looking at?
Yeah, and I think a lot about like it is next gen is different for every industry too. And we serve lots of different industries. You have lots of different customers across the globe, and I think that is also a nuance too to how their customers are evolving. I think that a lot of where we are today currently is we're past digitizing. Most people have moved paper to forms. We've got automated factories and manufacturing plants. We've really now all of our core business processes in some way have data and are capturing data and leveraging it. Most people out in the field are connected in some way, have a device, and connectivity is improving. I think offline is still a very big part of the field service fabric, but at the same time, I think connectivity is helping us. I think that what it presents for us is the workforce is evolving, the customer experience is evolving. Safety in the last 2 years has taken on a completely new meaning of safety in the workplace, and even where specialized expertise where we all could just get up and travel may not happen in the same way. So I think that the next generation first is about, is your field operations agile enough to and resilient enough to move wherever you need to move? And that's actually different from here is the process and we're structured and we're moving to we've got to adapt. We have to adapt fast. There's currently different economic, uncertainty in economic times. We talk a little bit about the gig economy, but this ability to be more composable, plug and play, new vendors, bring people on. The workforce and the change in the workforce is different. The way we can communicate internally with our field, get to experts with an aging workforce sort of coming in, sort of aging out. How do we retain that institutional knowledge? It's very different. And then at the end of the day, the other big sort of pillar I would say is around automation and the leveraging the technology. I think most organizations have dabbled in some way with a device, connecting signals, using drones in some way, but no one's really cracked the nut like well yet, where their entire organization is just operating on it. That data, the signals, it's automating, and now we are all in the world of not doing mundane routine tasks, and we're actually using humans and our, to our field to be really technical experts, to be in the field to provide the kind of service that we want them to have. And I think that's our opportunity really in the future, is the next generation is leveraging, actually making sense of all the data and interpreting it way so that it is, that is the predictive outcome mode, but moving that into, but so what? And how do our roles change? How do we metric and hire differently for our people? And then obviously, ultimately, how do we provide the customer service and experiences we want for our organizations and our brands?
Geez, you talk about so many critical areas and transformations that are happening right upon us. And, the Service Council's research is signaling a lot of the similar transformations. The people side,
Mm,
the work side, right? Work is changing. The IT and technical requirements, the complexity of products is evolving. According to the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, all of our technicians and engineers that responded to it, nearly 95% agree that the IT and technical requirements are increasing, complexity of products is increasing, and the pressures from both management and customers is increasing. But what they're still challenged by is automation that could help alleviate their day to day, right? Paperwork and admins continues to be their number one dislike of the job, right? That's
mm,
still taking up about 20% of their day, and the time they spend finding information to be effective in the field is the second biggest languish in the field in terms of effectivity or effectiveness at the field service engineer level. So how can we make information more accessible? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's a critical thing that we're looking at because of the complexity of work and some of the transformations
yeah,
that you highlight. um, let's move into okay, a lot of planning, right? We're kind of I can't believe it's already September. This is crazy. And Dreamforce is right around the corner, as is the Smarter Services Symposium. So lots of planning. Congrats on and kudos on all those planning activities. Um, but as we approach CY23, right? There's a lot of critical pillars that we're looking at, and we continue to. So one of which is at the people side, right? You talked a little bit about the retirement crisis. That's going to continue to expand. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, those that are 65 plus will nearly double from now until the year 2050, from 50 to 95 million. So we're going to continue to see that knowledge exit the field at a even greater rapid pace. So that's there. But also, according to the Voice of the Field Service Engineers survey, 54% of responding technicians indicated that they weren't committed to the job or the career of being a field service technician. So they were going to either leave or they weren't sure if they were going to leave the job. And it's
mm,
not like somewhere over the rainbow. It's 40% of the time within the next 1 to 3 years. So it's right upon us. There's an engagement crisis. So people's a huge critical transformation and pillar that we're looking at. It continues to be amongst the top agenda items of service leaders. The second is on this process side of things. Customers are evolving, right? Personalization, they're driving towards personalization and agility. They're trying to go to self-service portals and channels that are more efficient in terms of service delivery. And so it's changing the way in which they engage with us, and then how do they transition from one channel to the next. We've seen pockets of modernization, but how do we integrate these customer journeys technologically is something that we're looking at continuously. And that's kind of the last element and pillar that we're looking at, is that technology journey, right? Digital transformations were highly reactive amongst the pandemic. Now they're getting more proactive in their approach, where eliminating the silos that exist. Modernization is not transformation, right? We got to move to this single pane of glass perspective on the technology stack
yeah.
that's enabling us to be effective. Can you just any reaction to some of the things that I just talked about, or are these in line with some of the things that you're tracking?
Yeah, I mean, they all are, and I think you hit on many of the things that I, was mentioning, that I think is what we have to address in the next generation of field service. Like, I mean, the field operates with our greatest and most, valuable asset, the field, our people. How do we engage with them? How do we leverage their time much more effectively? And so, yes, we're not seeing folks who are doing 20, 30 years tenure in the same way in many industries. That, part of that is the institutional knowledge I was talking about. We really need to capture that so that, you're getting the tenure, we're getting the experience of these tenured folks. And how do you create a mode where people do ride along? They could talk to people. They cut out.
A brief cutout. Welcome back,
Okay.
Taksina. Here we are. We're good.
Wi-Fi at its best. There we go. All right. Just being able to transition them out of the field, but still, in your organization, right? And so we have been talking to organizations about that, sort of making remote assistance a much more valuable resource. I mean, that obviously saves the truck rolls. You think about ADT as an example. Right now, they're using remote assistance in a very different way. I think 4,000, it's almost like half their calls coming into the contact center now, like a really remote assistance instead of sending somebody out. But then when they're out there, they're spending really valuable time with the technicians who are out there. And so I think they're the people, the role of the person has changed. And so that's one of these, like, as you point, a core pillar. Hiring and attracting talent in apprenticeship type programs is very different now. And how quickly can you skill them? To your point, I think the access of information is also incredibly different. So like things that I think technology can be an enabler for, like, really only giving you the information that you need because it has context. It's personalized even for you as a technician. I mean, we do a lot of personalization in marketing, but a technician also needs to be personalized, so it's who's the customer or who's the site you're going to. You've been here before, you know what you need to do, but also what your preferences are, where you are normally, who, we have this today, like, who do I like to work with, the crews, this is like where I already work, these are the policies. Your dispatchers know that in their heads most of the time, and like operationalizing that is definitely a lot more challenging. But with technology, it makes it possible. And so I think there's those areas. But then there's also simple things that really help with employee productivity and engagement. And it's, how quickly can you get someone in the field to do the work? They have the right tools. We've been saying this for a while, right place, right, are they at the right place with the right tools at the right time? And that the customer's actually there, or you could make their visit. And so your first time to fix is high. But it's not just about that engagement there. It's actually about all of the content. When you're there, it's the simple things like, can I just not have to take off my gloves to say I've arrived, send the customer a text? Can I reorder a part? Can I get information really quickly so that I can help the customer in their journey on? Many field technicians, depending on what industries, they go from installation to an upgrade. Right, so the in the driveway upgrade and quoting is just simple and easy and touchless, and they have that ability. Or we're launching lots of new products really quickly. How do I get that information fast? How do I provide the service in store the way I would, like in home, the way I do in store, for example? And that sort of is incredibly valuable. I think you touch on an interesting one around like process, because to your point, it's very easy to modernize an existing process. And I actually see a lot of field service implementations where we're struggling with this. Customers who, companies who, organizations come into that experience and really like, I have an RFP and a checklist of things that I have done in the past, and, almost not taking the opportunity to say, what does my organization need to be in the future and how might that change? Like we're replicating the forms we have today. We're replicating the processes and handoffs we have today. Someone else creates this log, so we'll digitize the log that's in the car for parts, and that gets sent somewhere else. And the continuity of data is one element that I think people miss. And we talked about your conversation around data silos. Organizations need a data strategy to go do this, and so I think that is one element. I do think that many organizations have started thinking beyond field operations as one unit. It's really the service operations, right? You think about the whole end-to-end service operations. And then I think the other big part to this is we have a lot of new technology. People are experimenting in small pockets. When does it become mainstream? And I think, IoT connected signals, they are becoming a lot more mainstream where they're just inherent now. Like you've launched a connected product, it's already in, it gives signals to the customer in the customer app. Why would your technician not have that as well? And your contact center agent, frankly.
Yeah.
And so this
Yeah.
becomes a new way of like leveraging that data in a new way. I think a couple of things that I would add, that's probably very relevant that I'm hearing in addition to what you're talking about today is around the rising costs.
Yeah.
You think about our supply chain, our fuel costs, and really cost takeout right now. That's
Mhm.
a high topic and agenda item. Is like right now, how do we shave minutes, times, dollars for technician productivity? But ultimately, because we need to, we've got a huge shortage in our and accountability we have to have for our stakeholders.
Yeah, geez, I love this conversation. It's like so in line with our trends and some of the things we're hearing. From a KPI and metric perspective, we hear service leaders moving and shifting. We all have these holy grail KPIs, right? First time fix rate and CSAT and engagement and all these other things. And really, at the end of the day, when you look at those metrics that are more traditional in nature, they're outcome oriented, right? First time fix rate, it either is solved on the first visit or it isn't, right? But what is the causal factor that is mitigating that, right? What are some of the causal factors? So it's things like uh, dispatch efficiency. Are we accurately triaging and diagnosing that we have the right skill set, the right location, the right part, right? The importance of parts. Um, in order to resolve that on a first visit, right? So that is a causal factor, because when there's erosion of efficiency of triage and dispatch, it's going to erode first time fix rate, which is the outcome. So we see this shift in terms of KPI and measurement away from outcome to more causal factors, or from lagging to leading indicators, if you will, from a metrics perspective. It's just a shift that we hear. And then the other thing that we're hearing is this parallel between customers and employees, right? If you think about the customer, right, we've seen an evolution of how is an effective relationship maintained and measured, from CSAT to Net Promoter Score to customer effort, right? What is the effort it takes for that customer to seek and receive service and support in whatever issue they're encountering? Because each one of those touch points is a conversion opportunity, of course. Well, the same thing is happening on the employee side in terms of measurement. We're seeing a shift to employee effort. How easy are we making a day in the life of an engineer? We call it a technician agnostic infrastructure. So, upskilling, reskilling, we've heard all these different phrases. We've heard of this
Yeah.
information and empowerment platform that's kind of enabling this employee effort to be easy. So that's just one of the other things. So lots of parallels between customers and employees. I'll come back to that later in the discussion, because there's many other parallels I can reference as we go through the discussion. Let's go forward though. Let's build on this trends discussion. So some not so common trends, but just as important, that are growing are in particular are ESG initiatives and ethical practices. This is an important topic to you, I know, in our planning discussions. Any comments on this?
Yeah. I don't know how not so important it is anymore, and it may just be like where Salesforce is in the nexus of this conversation most frequently. That I'm having it in every executive conversation. I think obviously different industries and different customers are going through their own transformations of what ESG means for them. Salesforce as a company, obviously, we put sustainability as one of our core values, as and have been. We're advocates behind the One Tree.org, to plant a trillion trees initiative. And very much committed to the net zero campaign. And so maybe where from my vantage point, we probably have this conversation very regularly, because your field operations is very much in the nexus for organizations of the way you operate and how you then deliver your products and services. the impact that you are making, into environmental factors, as an example. I would say the truck roll is the most obvious one that we all sort of like can do the math and equate to. Honeywell decreased, I think, their drive time efficiency because they optimized their routes by 13%. And that equaled, I think, 150 tons of carbon. Like, that's incredible. Right. And so just being able to track that and know, that you are making an impact. So one is reporting and just knowing where you are as a business, like benchmarking where you are, and then deciding like which of these metrics am I going to make an impact on. And I'm going to optimize my routes in a way that has a material impact to carbon. Right. The other one is actually, do I need to go out at all? Because I
Yeah.
can do it virtually. I can do a remote install. There's so many ways now we can do a pre-installation check video remote visit before you go, as an example. And so I think that's the conversation there. One of the things that I talk a lot about, I think, on the ESG front, especially I think in the environmental side, is like, you think about where reporting plays a part. Some people, if you're a public company, you're governed by certain reporting standards and you need to start doing that. And obviously that is true. Your supply chain, and if you and many of us are in like, manufacturing of products, OEMing of products, you are in the supply chain. Yours is actually part of your end. If you have a B2B to B2C, organization, and that's your customer and that's how you go to market, that there is, you are part of that supply chain and you have to report even for your customers and the rest of it. So it's not just your stakeholders there. And then the third I say is your end customer and your investors and stakeholders are a new buyer. And we are seeing this more and more where people are choosing to buy based on their values. And so the end consumer is making choices behind organizations who stand by more of this. So I think that invariably it sort of comes up that you're optimizing your field operations for efficiency. Those efficiency gains, you should track them to show that you are making an impact. So I'd say that is one very big part. I think the other one for me that is also dear is I think we have an opportunity to create equitable work. And I say that because, there are ways in which, there are organizations where your dispatch is working off a whiteboard, or a dispatcher who knows the crews, who knows certain people, and we just have unconscious bias as people to who may get the better job to go to. I'm Australian, so it's a remote territory that no one wants to drive to or is uncovered, and so you see these sort of really permeate in the way work gets distributed. And I think we have a huge opportunity, and I think it's something that Salesforce stands behind, which is really about creating equitable work for different people based on their skills, based on how they're trained, and how we create opportunity. We have a huge commitment to workforce development, and I think this particular part of the community is one that we continue to create more optionality for. Because like those contractors who get to that site, don't have the right tools, can't do the right work, and suddenly don't get paid for it. Like, they are some of our lowest income workers in some industries. And I think that's an opportunity for us to really create a much more, equitable social impact through our field operations. One is dear
I
to my heart, as
love it.
you can see.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And we've been one of the KPIs that we look at as an organization is to what degree do we have diversity in terms of our audience demographics. And woman in service as one demographic has continued to rise over the last several years, and it's something that we kind of like get excited about. And so I was obviously eager to have today's podcast you as our featured guest in support of that. But there's many other areas of diversity and equity and all the good things around inclusion and belonging with respect to neurodiversity. And we've seen so many cool programs around neurodiversity and inclusion. And there are some organizations out there that have just really done a great job at this topic. It's something that we're going to be featuring at our upcoming conference. So we're really excited about it. The Home Depot will be there
Oh,
talking a
that's
little bit about some of those topics as well. So,
I mean,
um,
that's really great. There's an organization that we worked with. We actually showcased them a few Dreamforces ago called Biddy and Bo's Coffee. And
okay.
they, yeah, and they're, I think they're on the East Coast of the US and basically, serve coffee. They really only hire their kids. One of the kids has autism, and basically their entire organization and how they've staffed it to serve coffee out of that. And as Salesforce, we've been able to help them really sort of grow and be able to create a way for them to grow their business. And I think that's what that's the reason I think we attract such incredible people at Salesforce, because they come to this
Yeah.
with this mission of just like being really making a difference and an impact.
Yeah, personal disclosure. I have 4 children, one of which is on the autism spectrum. So this is near and dear to my heart. I love
So,
anything we can do as a platform to create greater diversity and inclusion. It's something we're a big
it's
believer in.
great.
So let's go down. Let's go further into the discussion. Let's continue to go.
Yeah.
So the key ingredients to best in class approaches to field service, next gen field service. Let's face it, there's some commonalities, right? What are some of the things that you're seeing across your customer segments that you're like, oh, they've got it, they're on the path, this is the path. Can you help us define how you see that in terms of those best in class approaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, like when you set out to do transformation, you set yourself metrics and goals that you want to achieve. Like that is like almost a must have. I think the metrics that matter are actually outcome based. They're not time based and they're not productivity only, but they are about the outcome. So setting those metrics are incredibly important. Having the leadership, and this is about us, sort of the executive leadership. The conversations we're having of this is really from the C suite. This is where we are going as an organization. It's transforming us in this way. And that really makes a change to the adoption you need in the field, because you can see the vision for where you're going and why you are contributing to it. I think if you come down to the actual like field operations and field service operations itself, I think there's like three things that you think about. Like you need to connect all your teams, right? You connect your frontline, whether it is your technicians with your back office, it is with the customer. It's like on the terms, the way they need. It's real time, and it's available whenever they need to, with the information at their fingertips. The next is that it's more personalized. So how are you leveraging that data to make it meaningful? You know that these are the products they already have. Here's what you have in your truck. This is what you need to, this is what you're missing and how quickly you can get it here, right? This ability to have data at the fingertips and personalize that experience when you are in home, on site in a way. And then the third is how you scale your operations. And so, like, think about organizations where thinking about, AAA as an example. AAA in Carolinas need to get like obviously emergency roadside assistance out there. The kind of sheer scale of Labor Day weekend coming up as an example of the kind of contact. Like how do you operationalize that fast? You've got a customer experience where they know and it's trusted, consistent. They can raise an appointment really quickly. You have SLAs to come in. You have best in class scheduling and optimization to get the right people, and the dimensions at which you bring these people together to get to the right roles is equitable and fair, but has the policies, governed by, many organizations have unions. You have to have, the ability to really, put this right. So, structure it the way your terms are for your organization, but to be able to scale that, at
Yeah.
scale, across an organization. And so a lot of this is really creating a new way of working, collaborating, connecting, thinking deeply about the customer in your organization and using data to be your superpower, and then really creating scale across your organization. And so these three areas are really, I think, are common for whichever industry. And so you almost can plug in, like, insert, are you talking about a contractor, a partner,
Yeah.
a distributor, a customer, or a person, an employee, to what are you trying to achieve in an organization, and what is that ultimate metric that drives us forward? And carbon footprint might be one of them, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most important topics of our generation. Absolutely. So kudos. The We just had a webinar with one of your featured customers, 360 Apartment Renovations, and
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it is a really great example of a roadmap for organizations to consider modeling against. It was just a tremendous transformational story. The results speak for themselves, but the approach that they took in terms of the transformation was just very impressive. And our listening audience has been continuously commenting on the value of the session. So I'd encourage our listening
Oh, what
audience
did
to,
they say?
oh, they
Yeah.
just the positivity of the story, just really impressive in terms of, here's an organization that's small and scaling, and right in the middle of the pandemic, launched a field service transformation project, was on time with delivery, and achieving tremendous results. And so I would just encourage our listening audience to reference that story. It's available through consumption at our website. I think Salesforce has it as well. Yeah, just a great discussion that we had last week with the Salesforce team and 360 Apartment Renovations. And you referenced AAA. Shameless plug, Scott Verbracken, the VP of Automotive Services for AAA Auto Club Group, will be keynoting at our upcoming Smarter Services Symposium. And that's an industry that is so intensive in terms of the safety issues that are prevalent, the death rates that are way greater in that industry versus others. I mean, here they are responding to roadside, emergencies, and having cars whiz by them at 80 miles an hour, and fatality is just a huge, huge challenge. And so they're just an organization. We look forward to having them have the platform to tell their story of how they're creating safe practices in the field, and looking forward to having Scott join us. So
Oh,
I
that's
love,
great. I would definitely
yeah,
want to hear about that. That's great. I
yeah,
mean, I
it's going
think
to
that
be a
that
great
is,
one.
I mean, that scenario is exactly, that's talking about personalizing and the context. Like you think about,
Yeah,
like, because they do a lot of in-home visits because the
yep,
car's like the battery's dead at home and you need to
yeah,
turn up at home. So, but sending someone to an in-home versus they're on that freeway is materially different, and sort of the prioritization and just that's the trade-offs and constant, like your agility as an organization to adapt and to know and to be basically sensing all the time, and that
yeah.
is this notion of agility and sensing, is very crucial to the fabric of organizations being much more efficient in the new
Yep.
world.
So let's continue down the topic of transformation, but move into that digital transformation side of things, which continues to be a
Mm,
priority from our research. Our
hmm.
research data suggests investments in digitization will continue, and top investments continue to point towards that information platform and that empowerment platform that I've been talking about. We frame it as a technician agnostic infrastructure, so that as the dependency on other labor, whether it's extended labor networks, independent contractors, or the emerging workforce as that retirement crisis continues to grow, whoever's coming into the situation, they need to be empowered with the same level playing field in terms of access to customer history, asset history, service manuals, knowledge portals, knowledge-based articles, all the good things that are required to be effective in the field. And then they need to be empowered as well. Do they have the ability to order parts? Do they have the ability to even have visibility to parts? Let's go backwards. Do they have the ability to transfer parts from truck stock to truck stock? Those are some of the areas we continue to see in terms of empowerment. And you talked a
Yeah.
little bit about this revenue creation methodology, because the field engineer is not only a function of service and support, they're a function of opportunity now as well, right?
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about digital transformation? We continue to see challenges with respect to integration of technologies into process workflows, that connection of process and technical roadmaps as an inhibitor to realizing the value. What are some of the things you're hearing in terms of effective transformation at the digitization side of things?
Yeah, I mean, digital transformation is also a really big topic. I feel like we could probably do sessions on this alone, and we everybody's transformation journey to digital has accelerated. The pandemic gave us, I think, in technology, maybe a different gift. I like to joke that QR codes found their purpose in life during COVID, but like we certainly had to rush to, like remote assistance, contactless signatures, contactless pickup, order and pickup in the driveway, and so I think we have really changed. Like, we're going to use drones for, remote measurements outdoors. You can come into the house. Can you come into my house? Like that, safety checks are completely different. So I think that the path to digitalization for different organizations, those who were already on that path were able to thrive much faster. Those who didn't started really quickly. And we talked a little bit about how, like, 360 apartments were on time. They did their project in the pandemic, as an example. Many organizations in this time period, almost recently, just had to execute fast in the workflows that they have on, like, core workflows. I think when you think about the transformation for it's also think a lot about, like, the evolve revolve. Like, it's sort of the evolution. It's a revolution, or it's really a transformation. And the transformation is, you're almost like, how am I rethinking my status quo completely? Am I and for some organizations, that's actually a business shift that was already happening. I'm a product organization going into product and services. I am no longer selling maintenance, but I actually sell uptime. And so suddenly my business model is already changing in a way that I have to accommodate this through digital means, because I provide a service and I can provide continuity, provide availability. And so how do I leverage that data in a way that I can provide that service to you? I have, you talked about metrics around CSAT and NPS. I think lifetime value is the metric that many organizations strive for. Like, how are you staying with us? What is your value over time? How do we create the loyalty, or for you as an organization? And that comes from service. I mean, marketing gives you awareness, sales gets you in the door, and really service keeps you for life. And that ability for you to be there, that you have, delivered what you said you were going to deliver, what you were going to build. Now, what that means, though, in an organization, is that operations is also part of service. It means that everybody is part of service. Product is part of service. Manufacturing in the back end it's all part of service. Your digital website is a representation of information where customers can self-serve. They go there first. Most people who call the contact center, they've already done. You and I do this. We do all of our research beforehand. We've probably watched YouTube videos. We've already done the follow-ons. We've tried this and it doesn't work, right? And so we've Googled, we've done YouTube. And so when I come to you, I already have, like, a bit of, a background. You should know all of that. And so
Yeah.
digital transformation, in my mind, is that connectivity, right? That I actually know more about where you have been, and that's across lots of parts of your organization.
I
And so,
love
yeah,
yeah, I love these stories you're telling, because you bring it personal, right? Like, just yesterday, I had a fraudulent charge on my Amazon Prime account. So someone ordered a Prime video. I must have left my Prime logged in at an Airbnb or something, and all of a sudden I saw Elvis, the new Elvis movie, was ordered, and I said, I didn't watch that at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. That wasn't me. So I called up Amazon and I said, that wasn't me. Could you log me out of all of my apps and all of my devices, because it just wasn't me. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. So the importance of digital transformation and the empowerment of remote connectivity, and it was shocking to me that I couldn't resolve it in that scenario. And she was walking me through the typical triage and diagnosis steps, and she was doing a good job. She was sweet as can be and very pleasant to talk to. But I'm like, okay, let's skip to number 7 in the triage tree, because I know that we're already down here. So the consumer experience is driving the business to business experience, is the point here, and it's
yeah,
becoming the expectation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And exactly. And so I think the role that you see these roles emerging, the chief customer officer,
Yep.
you have the chief digital officer who really
Yeah.
has this experience in mind, bringing all of these together. I think that is a significant change in doing that. I think, as with all things in technology, we go in and out of frameworks and fads. It is definitely a decentralized world right now where data lives in many places, and it is composable. Applications are composable. So, to your question around integrations, like that diagnostic on, Amazon, for example, or a device is a component that can live somewhere but should be accessible in an app for a technician or someone who comes
Yeah.
on site, like if you have a Roku device or something like that. And so I think that place around integration is making data accessible, making applications accessible in a way that you can bring them forward. Having said that, there's also this notion of creating data lakes where all of the data is coming into play. And how do I
Yeah.
now centralize that in a customer data platform in a way that really unifies my customer profile? I have the telemetry of, my device, my customer, what they've bought, where they've been on the website, and I have all of this data in data lake. How do I create a unified profile to show me
Yeah.
that? And how is that accessible to everybody in an organization? Obviously within realms of privacy, but so that it is valuable. I think one topic we haven't touched on as we're talking is actually the role of AI in all of this. And I think that, it's a very big part of where how we're leveraging data today, how we're taking that data platform and really thinking about what are the insights that are material for me to go, consider and think about. My camera all blurry. I realize
It's
that's
gotten blurry on us. There you are. I
gotten
see now.
blurry.
We're good.
That is my eyesight, John, these days. So I don't really know.
I just got LASIK surgery like a month ago, so
Okay.
no longer for me. No longer for me.
I just think the power of AI.
Yeah.
We have to be stewards of
Mm,
creating, ethical AI. But where AI can really play a part is in this really accelerating the consistency of patterns, right? And you think about okay, I've seen 5 customers, 10, 200, 3,000 customers do the same thing. That's a knowledge article. Maybe I should push you a quick video. Could I assemble a video from my best technicians to then go show you? That's the world we need to live in. We need to live in this world where technology is really watching, sensing, creating, and then just making our lives better. And so that starts with, okay, let's make it simple. You turn up, you're in the geo fence, it tells the customer you've arrived, right?
yep.
And that
Yep.
is a simple today solution. In the future, it should be, here's what the signal and the device just did. You need to pick up another part. It's on the way. Here's where you would pick it up. And then you need to be able to make this change. And oh, by the way, the customer was on your site. They're going to upgrade to the next solar panel.
Yep.
Here's now what you should you might want to pick up that because you might get to do an upgrade in store. That's the world that we have to be operating in as we move
Yeah.
forward. And to do that, that's the digital transformation of crossing all these different silos and having that
Yeah.
data be more than just, I'm a field operator, I live in this world, and I'm just, I use whatever I need for the job and the work order.
You've circled me right back around to that customer employee parallel that I was talking about earlier. So not only the measurement, but the way in which we support is evolving similarly. So we've heard all about this movement to, from reactive to proactive support at the customer level. We're seeing the same thing happen inside the organization, where we're proactively measuring employee efficiency or lack thereof and
Mm-hmm.
providing guided workflows and looking for anomaly detections to plug in and proactively support that employee and say, you might need this. If we know it's a 6-hour delivery experience and it's taking 12 hours, something's wrong. You're either without a part, without the knowledge, or are stuck in some capacity. Maybe it's an unsafe situation. So we're seeing a lot of movement to a proactive employee experience at the service engineer level. Another parallel we're seeing between customers and employees. So kudos, cool
Yes.
stuff.
You touched on something. Because you touched on something for me, which is I was talking to a utility and it's very late if you have to dig up the road because the pipe is burst, right? It's too late at that
Yeah,
point. But let's think
yeah,
about if you were proactive and knew that the sewer or whatever was actually the valve was not working properly on some pipe, and actually I could go and maintain it because it's not in my 5-year cycle of walking by to check it. That
yep,
proactivity too. is super important to be able to notify, create work order. That's the proactive and preventative maintenance that we've all been, looking at, and the data is showing us how to be predictive. The other piece to that is how quickly are we now unifying that communication, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not just telling whoever lives on the street, you're telling the street, the business, now the local governments want to know, they need to put on their website because their constituents need it. And so this flow of information is very different too now. And so I grew in a world where you have to be able to broadcast updates on
Yeah.
your trust and availability for certain
Yeah.
products, and especially as you are even further up the infrastructure, incredibly important. And that's a different paradigm to be in, where there's not enough information. I don't know what's happening to just right. I can provide that now. And I, as an
Yeah.
organization, can publish it to all of my stakeholders and constituents in a way that they can consume it to give to their customers.
Love it. Love it. That's outstanding. That builds off of the movement to proactive, that unified communication. I love it. That's going to be our next webinar, by the way, our next podcast. How's that? All right. So I just heard. So let's talk a little bit. We're getting to the last 10 minutes here. I got a couple more things to get
Oh,
to.
wow. Yep.
I know, right? It's flown. I just heard Salesforce move past SAP as the leading enterprise app company. Congratulations. Everybody saw this coming, right? Kudos to Mark Benioff and the leadership team, yourself, and many others. Can you share any behind the scene elements? What makes Salesforce so special? What's in the drinks? What's the ingredients here? What's happening over there? How do you concoct this culture?
Firstly, thank you for the milestone. I mean, it is a milestone for many folks, and I'm just so proud of the teams that have helped get us here. It's no easy feat. I think I often thought about like graduating and being an SAP consultant at one point. You know what I mean? So it's a huge a huge milestone for us in a different way. I talked a little bit about our values. It really
Yeah.
is. We are driven by, we've always had four values. They've never changed. It's trust, customer success, innovation, and then we had equality. We had those, and then we added sustainability. And so these five values now sort of guide us. And I think that is a lot of, we attract talent who are motivated by this, motivated by the impact, and see that Mark often says this, and I think many of our employees feel this, like the business is the greatest platform for change. And we can do that here. It's the Biddy and Bo story that I shared. That's the stuff that really sort of gets me as an organization, to the commitment that we have here. I also think that for the size of organization we're like 70,000 people, many, many, many acquisitions, great acquisitions. We're still a startup in many ways. We're like a better, better, never best mantra. And we are healthily always disrupting ourselves. We reevaluate all the time. The pace of change is incredibly fast, probably where my team are like, this is, we often say it's too much work, it's too fast, there's so much change. We do still operate at that speed, even though we're a large organization. And I think that healthy amount of disruption in ourselves. I mean, when I led Sales Cloud for the last 2 years, like we're the market leader. 22 years in, like, what are we going, what can we do to create this? And the team were incredible and churned out even more innovation of how sales tools need to change. But that meant like having to rethink and just disrupt the limiting beliefs and the orthodoxies that you get as an organization over that time of, we used to do it this way, this is how we do it. And so that growth mindset is really, like, I think, continuing to contribute to how we function in a little bit of chaos, but healthy, healthy change.
Healthy chaos. I love it. I have 4 kids. I am very familiar with healthy chaos, or perhaps unhealthy chaos at times. All right. Well, very good. Let's move to our last couple questions here. So, obviously, the Service Council's super excited about our affiliation with Salesforce. We've had a long-standing partnership, and Paul Whitelam is a technology advisory board member of the Service Council. Many contributions from Paul, and we're so pleased to be talking with you today and the broader team. It's been great to feature your customers on webinars and really tell the story of innovation and all the change that you're making in the world. can you share any reflective thoughts on the affiliation with the Service Council? I'd love to hear your viewpoint.
Yeah, Paul's a remarkable leader. You're very lucky to have him on your council. I think a lot about Salesforce's success has been, maybe back to your last question around our ecosystem. I'm a
Yeah.
product of our ecosystem. We create 1 trillion, dollars worth of GDP of like the next 5 years of like where our ecosystem, our partners, our trailblazers who are making change in their world. And this is one of those. This is a community. We talk a lot about communities where we deeply listen and get feedback. And I encourage everybody here who hopefully is listening to give us feedback. Like, what do you want to see more of? What should we be doing more of? Because this is why it's valuable to us, right? I think that we're an organization that loves for our customers to talk to each other, to spend time with each other. That's why Dreamforce is the gathering, and self-organize lots and lots of different like communities. And Service Council is one group that really is dedicated to kind of like the best practice of service. You wake up every day thinking about how can I really create the best customer experience, the best service possible. There's a whole community of people out there, and that really want to engage in that, and that's why I love talking and hopefully talking to some people and hearing from many people from this community, because we welcome the feedback. It makes us stronger, greater, and also just like I love hearing the stories like 360 Apartments that we're making change for organizations. We should feature more customers, I think, John. I think there are lots of really great stories that they would be welcoming to share because it's great
And
innovation.
and we'll feature many at the upcoming symposium, and we're looking forward to it. It's been a really rewarding partnership for us. All right, last thing. Can share something personal about yourself? I don't detect a Boston accent, that's for sure. It's somewhere
No.
else. Somewhere else. Can you share
Yes,
anything
it
personal
is.
about yourself?
Yeah. I personally am a massive foodie. I travel destinations probably to enjoy to eat food, and so I kind of seek out these places. But I'm in Australia, like many Australians who like to travel and adventure. Bought a return ticket for a few years to the UK, and then started buying one-way tickets, and so lived in the UK and London, and did a lot of global implementations of Salesforce and other CRM tools out of the UK, and then 8 years in New York, and now in California. Married to a Canadian and two beautiful young boys. And what I say to that is, I actually love the global aspect of what that brings to the communities here. And so, like when we build products, we represent those communities in which we serve, and so that has an opportunity because they are. I have been in a German office and just like working the way Germans like to work, and then you're the way our Spanish customers do, and I think that creates a very different dynamic as you get that
Sure.
exposure across lots of industries and organizations, and it's really good food, which is the reason that draws me to these cities. So that's a little bit about me.
Outstanding. Taksina, you were wonderful. I really enjoyed the conversation. She is Taksina Eammano. She's the Executive Vice President of Field Service at Salesforce. Congratulations on all your success, and good luck with Dreamforce coming up. And we really appreciate you being our featured guest today. If you are interested in listening back to this, you can find it on any of the podcast channels you get your podcast from, all of them. So just go wherever you get it from, and you can get it there, or you can get it at the Service Council's website or Salesforce. I believe it will be there as well. Again, Taksina, this has been a really enjoyable hour together. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Bye. Thanks.